All right, let's dive into a really fascinating business story. We're going to talk about a company that faced a complete shutdown of its main market. And instead of just collapsing, it pulled off this incredible pivot that led to a spectacular triple-digit success. Let's break down how they did it.
So that's the big question, right? How does a mining company even begin to survive when its number one market just vanishes? Well, the answer lies in the story of an Indonesian company called PT CITA Mineral Investindo, or CITA for short. And believe me, they didn't just survive, they totally reinvented themselves. So how'd they pull it off?
Okay, first things first, a super quick primer on the business. It all starts with this stuff called bauxite. That's the raw ore, basically just a special kind of rock they dig out of the ground. That rock then gets processed into a fine white powder called alumina. And that alumina powder, that's the key ingredient that gets smelted down into the final aluminum metal we all know and use. Just keep this simple chain in your head: rock to powder to metal.
Now, for years and years, CITA was a huge player in that very first step. They were one of Indonesia's biggest bauxite producers, and their business model was pretty simple: dig the rock out of the ground and export it. Most of it went to international buyers who would then do all the processing themselves.
But what's really interesting when you look at their history is that CITA has always been a company of transformation. I mean, it started out as a furniture business, of all things. Then it jumped into mining. And then, and this is so crucial, in 2013, a full year before everything changed, they started building a domestic processing plant. You got to remember that move. That incredible foresight is the key to this entire story.
And let me tell you, that foresight was about to be put to the ultimate test. A massive policy shift was coming down the pipeline that was going to threaten their entire business model as they knew it. And here it is. In January 2014, the Indonesian government dropped an absolute bombshell on the entire mining sector: a ban on exporting unprocessed minerals. For a company like CITA, which made its money shipping raw bauxite abroad, this was an existential crisis. I mean, overnight, their main way of making money just gone.
But this is where CITA's strategy really stands out. Instead of fighting the new rule, they leaned into it. They publicly committed to supporting the government's whole vision of downstreaming, which is basically a policy to stop sending raw materials out of the country and instead process them at home to capture more of that value.
So, with their old business model totally toast, CITA had to build a new one pretty much from the ground up. And they turned that government policy from a massive threat into the very foundation of their future. Here's exactly how they did it.
Their plan, when you break it down, was honestly brilliantly simple. It had 3 core steps. First, they knew they couldn't do it alone, so they formed a strategic joint venture. Second, they used that partnership to build a massive world-class processing plant right there in Indonesia. And third, CITA, the bauxite miner, would now sell its raw ore to that new plant, effectively becoming its own best customer.
And here you can see the heart of that strategy in action. CITA took a crucial 30% stake in this new company called PT Well Harvest Winning, or WHW. This joint venture, with China Hangqiao Group as the majority partner, built this huge alumina refinery. And by 2016, it was up and running, turning CITA's bauxite rock into that much more valuable alumina powder.
So for almost a decade, this new model was chugging along, operating alongside what was left of the limited export market. But CITA knew the clock was ticking. The final, ultimate test of their long-term bet was just around the corner.
And then it happened, June 2023. The government slammed the door shut for good with a final, total ban on all bauxite exports. The very last piece of their old business model was gone. This was the moment of truth. Was their decade-long investment in this downstream strategy the right move? The numbers from 2023 give us a pretty good clue. In that last year that allowed for any exports, the company still pulled in about 460 billion rupiah from foreign sales. But look at this. The vast majority, 2.8 trillion, was already going to their domestic partner, WHW. The pivot was clearly well underway.
And then 2024 hits, and poof, just like that, export sales dropped to absolute zero. 100% of their product is now sold domestically, straight to their partner, WHW. The transformation is complete, but the real question is, was it profitable?
So, after a decade of hard work, a ton of investment, and a complete shutdown of their original market, did the strategy actually work? Did that massive bet pay off?
You bet it did. And how?
In the very first year after that total export ban, CITA's net profit surged by a staggering 246%.
So where did that incredible jump come from? Well, it was almost entirely driven by the performance of their associate company, WHW. See, by investing in that processing facility, CITA was now earning profits from the higher-value alumina product, not just the raw bauxite ore. Their strategy didn't just help them survive the ban, it made them massively more profitable and way more resilient.
And this right here is the result of that entire decade-long pivot. You can see it clearly. CITA transformed itself from a simple bauxite miner, totally vulnerable to the whims of export policy, into this sophisticated, integrated producer. By aligning with national policy, they moved up the value chain and completely secured their own future.
Ultimately, CITA's story is just incredible proof that the biggest threats can sometimes hide the greatest opportunities. By seeing the change coming and aligning with it, they didn't just dodge a catastrophe, they engineered their biggest success ever. It really makes you wonder, right? What's the looming ban in your world that could actually be the catalyst for your next great transformation?